guess it's summed up in the election of 2006. You could vote for Democrat John Kerry, who was from an oil family and a member of the secretive Skull and Bones Society, or you could vote for his cousin, George W. Bush, from an oil family and a member of the Skull and Bones Society. There's no choice. There's no difference. And anybody who still pays attention to Democrat and Republican, they're just getting snookered.
Okay, but so to get back to this situation, so you've got these families that are running everything. You've got an agenda to take down the United States, but the United States is not going to go. I mean, you know, people they're actually incredible citizens. They actually want to save the country.
Right.
They're patriots, if you will.
The problem is they're all divided. Okay. And like I travel around the country, and I find pockets of people everywhere who understand what's going on, who care about what's going on, who want to do something about it, but they all feel like that they're in the minority and that they're all alone because these people control the mass media. And this is why, by the way, that when's the last time you heard a national politician refer to the Republic? They don't even talk about the Republic anymore because we're not a republic anymore. We're just the empire. And all they can talk about is democracy. Democracy. We have to protect democracy. We've got to spread democracy. Well, what's democracy? It's ruled by the majority. So in other words, the epitome of democracy in action is a lynch mob. Well, that's not what we were given. We were not given a democracy. We don't want a pure democracy. We want a democratic republic. And what's the difference? Because in a democratic republic, if you're charged with a capital crime, then you get to face your accusers, you get to have legal representation, you get to go into a court and legal system, and you get to cross-examine the evidence against you, you get to have a fair trial, and then if you're found guilty and you have a chance for an appeal and it's turned down, then they can lynch you. Okay? That's the way it's supposed to work. But we are no longer a nation ruled by law.
Right. The corporations basically rule.
Corporations tell us what to do. And then again, it's that takeover of the state mechanism by corporations. It's the very dictionary definition of fascism.
So let's get back into what happened during the time of Paperclip and during the time of, you know, the atomic bomb. And maybe you could talk a little bit about what really went on back then, because I think a lot of people need to get their history, you know, straightened out in their heads. They
really do, because, you know, in our conventional history, it's like, well, there was the Russian Revolution, and then out of that grew communism, and then we had a Cold War with them versus capitalism, and yada yada yada. The truth of the matter is that the very same people in Wall Street and the City of London, these internationalists, these global financiers, they created communism in Russia. When the Russian Revolution broke out, Lenin was in Switzerland. Trotsky was in New York living on Rockefeller property. Okay, they sent them into Russia to capture the revolution for the Bolsheviks and turn Russia into a communist state, which they did. Okay, and the idea was, I think, was to build up a communist East versus a capitalist West, and they were going to perpetuate the Cold War many years before we saw it actually come into being. But the problem was it threatened to get out of hand. There were strong communist parties in France, England, Italy, Germany, even the United States. And so we talk about this one world government, but they really don't want a true one world government, because then they can't play one nation off against another or one economic bloc off against another. So this made them fearful, and they decided they had to stop the spread of communism. So the one country that was in a position geographically and economically to act as a bloc against the spread of communism was Germany. So they went in and found a German army intelligence agent, and they put him in charge of a little political party called the German Workers' Party, which he quickly changed the name to the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, the acronym of which is Nazi. And of course that was Adolf Hitler. And Hitler provided this block against the spread of communism, and then they perpetrated this whole idea of the Nazis were bitter enemies of the communists, okay?
And meanwhile, they're being financed by
and run by
Bush.
the same people.
Prescott Bush behind
Exactly.
the scenes.
Yeah, and the Rockefellers.
And what is it, Farben?
I.G. Farben.
I.G. Farben.
And the head of I.G. Farben was Herman Schmitz, and Herman Schmitz owned as much Standard Oil stock as John D. Rockefeller did. It was all the same international globalist, if you will. Now the problem is that Hitler got too strong, and the Germans were a little too efficient, and they overran Europe. They were moving into North Africa. They were pushing into Russia, taking over Norway, and were threatening Britain. And now all of a sudden it looked like they were going to have a one-world national socialist system. Well, they didn't want that either, but mostly they didn't want Germany in charge of the world economic order, because this had been the purview of the City of London, those bankers with the Bank of England, and their Wall Street compadres, okay? So at some point, even though they had created Hitler, put him into power, financed his rise, they turned against him, and that's when we had World War II. And they managed to stop Germany, push it back, and yes, we defeated Germany in World War II, but we didn't defeat the Nazis, because the Nazis were still much in power, and they cut deals. They swapped their exotic technology, their rocket technology, their energy manipulation technology, their mind control technology, chemical and technology, and pharmaceutical technology to the United States in exchange for immunity. And we brought them in over the war. And in the late 40s and early 50s, John J. McCloy, who had been head of National City Bank, which was one of the largest lenders of money to pre-World War II Nazi Germany, was made High Commissioner of Germany, and he pardoned thousands of unreconstructed Nazis, brought them over to the United States. His protege was Allen Dulles, who then was head of the CIA for many years. And under Dulles, he whitewashed their backgrounds and put these Nazis into our military-industrial complex. And that began the National Socialist infiltration of the United States system.
Wow, that's an excellent summation of really what happened behind the scenes. And this is what most people don't know.
No, you're never
about
taught
American
this in
history
school. Right.
and even the history of the world.